The Nashville Predators' immediate future isn't looking great at all. On today's show, we're going to look into the magic 8 ball that is hockey drafting and development and see who Barry Trotz may need to take a really good look at.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Wednesday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers. We love getting together and talking Nashville Predators hockey with you. I'm Ann Kemell. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. And friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, Emma, here's what's real. Nashville's postseason odds sit now at less than 1%. So it might be time to look ahead and see what is in store for the Nashville Predators down the line. On today's show, we're going to take a look into one aspect of that nebulous crystal ball. We're going to look at the pipeline. We're going to tell you who we think has a shot at being a real contributor down the road for this franchise. And we're going to tell you what we think Barry Trotz needs to do now to figure that out. Before we dive into all of that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Emma, some news yesterday. We're waiting to see how the dust settles, but just to keep everyone in the loop, Vinnie Hinostroza placed on waivers. He was here, has played 13 games, 2 assists. He's a 0 in plus minus. Played a lot of time with Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist at times. When you look at Vinnie Hinostroza's time here, kind of summarize what you saw. What's your takeaway, and how do you feel like this waiver situation is going to sort out?
Well, I think presumably he's being put on waivers for purpose of reassignment to Milwaukee, assuming he clears, which I think he will. I just think that, I think there was a lot of excitement. He was leading the AHL in scoring when he was called up at the end of December, and then he got to Nashville and quite frankly did not do a whole lot. Again, not just that he wasn't on the score sheet. He just was kind of one of those guys that felt a little invisible at times. I don't think he was a liability by any means. I don't think he made the team worse, but I also don't think he especially makes the team that much better.
Mhm.
I think that he was a guy they brought up at the time they brought him up. It was because they were in need of some more offense, and he was going to provide it. And I think that he really didn't. And then plus it's, I think, indicative of a larger problem if you have a team with guys like Philip Forsberg and Steven Stamkos, and your great white hope for more offense is Vinnie Hinostroza. But I mean, that's a whole other
There
issue.
is a red flag to that.
Yeah. So I think that he, that was initially why he came up, then kind of stayed in the lineup out of necessity due to injuries. Guys like Mark Jankowski, Luke Evangelista have all spent time out of the lineup. But I mean, I think that the waiver situation implies, at least I would think so, that at least one of, if not both, of Jankowski and Evangelista are close to returning because they don't have an extra forward right now. If both of those guys are hurt, then they don't have another forward on their roster. So that's potentially good news there. Both of those guys, I don't think either of them practiced on Tuesday, but they did both skate with the team Monday morning. So, potentially positive news there. And yeah, I think he'll clear waivers. I'm not really concerned about that.
What is so interesting to me as I think back to watching Vinnie Hinostroza over the stretch that he's been with Nashville is that I remember distinctly seeing him have potential for something big to happen, like a goal or a really great play, a great assist to set something up. But that potential never materialized into something, whether that was, due to him, due to something else. And so it was one of those situations where you can see why he was scoring really well in the AHL, but that doesn't necessarily translate. The other thing I think that we have to talk about, and I think that this is true of Nashville in a bigger sense, is that when you look at the roster that Nashville has, and you see a player like Vinnie Hinostroza, who, like you said, not a liability, but also didn't contribute a ton offensively, is that you don't necessarily see him as being a key cog in the wheel of the future. And when you look at Nashville's roster, yes, you've got the Forsbergs and the Stamkos and the Marchessault, you've got your Roman Josi, but you also have a roster that has a lot of players that you don't necessarily look at and go, now there's a player that's going to be a key cog in the wheel for this franchise moving forward. And I think that's part of what is so frustrating when you look at where Nashville is at, because you have some role players and you have, players who are, like you said, not a liability. But I don't know that you would look at this roster and say, you know what, here is a player who is going to be a key for this franchise moving forward. Except, and I do think we need to talk about these guys. I think we need to talk about Luke Evangelista, Zach L'Heureux, and Fedor Svechkov. And those are the three that I want to focus on right now because, A, a little bit of the younger guys. B, I think that there is this hope that those three could develop into key cogs offensively for this team. You look at Luke Evangelista, 41 games, only 5 goals, 15 points. But when you look at his body of work collectively, Emma, is this somebody that you think is the potential to be a consistent 20 goal scorer at some point for this team?
Potentially. I mean, I know that that's certainly the hope. I think that I don't know. It seemed to me like last year, at the end of last season, especially, and even into the playoffs, I mean, no one on the Predators had a really good playoffs, but I think that he did. I mean, obviously he wasn't scoring, but neither was anyone else. I think that he actually looked really good. And it was that kind of what you're describing, where it's like, ooh, it's right there. It's right
Yes.
there. You can see it. He's so close. And then he comes out this year, and again, I don't want to put this on him and say, like, oh, he's having a terrible year because, hi, look at the team around him.
Welcome to the
Everyone's having a
Nashville
terrible year.
Predators.
Experienced Predators hockey. I think that he is, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt this year and say that he is, you know, his season is just kind of a casualty of what this team as a whole is going through right now. Um, and, I'm not going to call it like when I look at this season so far and how utterly disappointing it has been. I am not looking at like, oh, you know why it's been so disappointing? Because Luke Evangelista hasn't scored more than 5 goals. That I'm not worried about that. I
Yes.
think when when you have those other guys on your team, you don't need Luke Evangelista to score 20 goals. You're supposed to be getting him kind of ramped up gradually to being, a key cog, like you said. Um, right now, everyone out there looks lost and, including the veterans, and that's not helpful to the development of the younger players either. So that's my long-winded way of saying, yes, I think he has the potential, but I'm not 100% on the train, like, yeah, like Luke Evangelista is our key to a Stanley Cup. I'm not quite there, but I
Mhm.
think that he could be. He
Mhm.
could be. And it's unfortunate that I feel like this year we didn't really get a fair this isn't like a fair assessment, or a good year to give a fair assessment of anyone on this team, I feel like, because of just how everything has played out.
I agree with that 100%. And what makes moving forward for Nashville so tricky is that you can look at last season and say, 18 game point streak, that's pretty unusual. That's not typical. It's hard to know what to take away from that. Then you look at this season and you say, oh my gosh, zebras. So many things have gone wrong. So many things are missing. And so it's hard to know what to take away from this season. I tend with Luke Evangelista to err on the side of he's more like last season. I think Evangelista is one of the players, and this again, pure speculation on my part. I think he is one of the players where he deferred subconsciously, consciously, I don't know, deferred to veterans. And so part of that, I think maybe affected some of the younger players, somebody like a Luke Evangelista, when you bring in a Stamkos and a Marchessault. I think there is some sort of, not that I don't have to step forward, but there are people leading the way. And
The
when
safety net.
the safety net, and when Vange came in, he came in with that YOLO, everybody's hurt. Why not? And so I think it was different. So I think he has the potential. I think Andrew Burnett and Barry Trotz need to be pretty intentional about getting him to his best level. And I think that's going to come with playing with veterans. And maybe Nashville at this point in the season, they're ready to make those line combination adjustments. Coming up, we're going to talk some more about players that we have seen in Nashville, Fedor, Svechkov, and Zach L'Heureux. We're also going to talk about who is in the pipeline for the defense. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59. It's right around the corner. One game, two teams, and endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on that coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, friends, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Emma, we talked a little bit about Luke Evangelista. Let's talk about Zach L'Heureux and Fedor Svechkov. I mean, they are as fresh can be here to Nashville. Zach L'Heureux, 44 games. Fedor Svechkov, 23 games. When you look at these two players and the small sample size that we have from them, initial, way too soon, so hard to take anything away from this season. What's your evaluation of them as being players that will be impact players, not just like fillers, but impact players 2 to 3 seasons from now?
I really like what I've seen from Svechkov this time around. And he even acknowledged it too, I thought very insightfully, which was that, saying that, yeah, my first call up, I was so nervous. Like I didn't even feel like myself. And now this second time around, he's playing with a lot more confidence. He plays with a little bit of an edge, but he's responsible. He is hungry. He's playing hungry, and he looks like he belongs in the NHL now. So I think that he definitely is a guy that like I like what I've seen this time around, and think that absolutely, maybe not right now, not quite there yet to be a real impact player right now, but in a couple seasons, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he looks, like you said, he looks like he belongs in the NHL. The game doesn't look too big for him. He has talked with us before about the biggest adjustment is the speed. And it's not just the on ice speed, although that is a factor, but it's also the speed at which you have to think the game. And I feel like we're seeing him gain momentum in that as we see him play. But again, I come back to this, Emma, with Nashville just basically out of the postseason. I would love to see some of these players, like a Fedor, Svechkov, put this boy with some of these veteran players, because yes, you brought these veteran players in to compete. You brought these veteran players in to set culture. You also brought them in to help these young players. And at this point, we're not competing. I think the culture is, I don't think it's unhealthy. I think it's frustrated in that locker room. I do not think, like we said on yesterday's show, it's not a quit, it's not a give up. But I think right now, what you really want to get out of these veterans is give him time with a Jonathan Marchessault or a Philip Forsberg. Is that going to be beyond his capabilities right now? Probably, maybe. But this is, what do you have to lose if you're Andrew Brunette at this point? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's still, I agree with you. I think that Svechkov and Tommy Novak have played extremely well together. So it's hard to justify breaking those two up. But yeah, I'm with you, on a line with a Forsberg or something. Why not? Like, try it, because like you said, at this point they have nothing to lose. I do still think that there is a belief. I've gotten it more so from Bruno than from the players, and I don't mean to say that the players don't believe, because they do, but I think that the players have given a more measured, level-headed, realistic kind of outlook on this, which is like, "Look, we know where we are in
Mhm.
the standings. We can't control that. All we control is how we play." And no matter if we're in first place or last place, we're still gonna go out and play really hard, because that's just what we do. That's what we're here for. Bruno almost, I feel like, has this like blind belief. Like, there's still hope in his eyes, like, "Oh, we could do it." And it's like, I mean, I love the confidence, buddy, but I don't know, man. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well,
So
and at
I
some
don't know,
point,
that could just be my interpretation of it, and I could be totally off, but I feel like that's kind of the vibe we've gotten from him.
mhm. And at some point, like, I'm with you, like, love that. And as the head coach, you have to lead the way you want them to walk things out. But I also am like, be realistic. You have a limited amount of time left in this season. You have to figure out what you have and don't have. And I'm talking about with the Fedor Svechkovs, with the Zach L'Heureux. Um, Zach L'Heureux, I think, we've talked about their, still making some adjustments, like still a little growing to do there, Zach L'Heureux. I worry about Zach L'Heureux being pigeonholed, because I think there is an offensive side to his game. And I know that when you come in the NHL, had a conversation with Mark Borvietsky about this with defensemen. It's, you look for a niche, like there is a skilled kind of a niche thing. But I worry that we're going to miss some offensive upside, some playmaking from Zach L'Heureux if he gets pigeonholed in that we need that grinder. That's one of the things I worry about. And so I would like to see him in a position like I've liked him with Novak and Svechkov. Yes, he's kind of the puck hunter there, but I like that the expectation is you're going to generate some offense there too. And I want to see more opportunities like that for somebody like a Zach L'Heureux.
Yeah, he's been getting some opportunities with O'Reilly and Nyquist as well. I think, again, two great guys to be with if you're someone who maybe needs to work on smoothing those edges out a little bit. But yeah, I think that he does have that edge, um, which is a good thing. I think that he can be, like, again, that Kiefer Sherwood type player that we've talked about, that, you know, I think Sherwood got pigeonholed a little bit,
Yes,
as being that, but he did the job well. He filled that role well. Not to say that he didn't, but I think that, it's I can see that happening too. Um, but yeah, I think at the same time though, LaRue does need to understand that, this is the big boys club and he's gotta really kind of clean up his act a little bit. Not that he necessarily did anything like dirty in the
right.
last game, but it more just like taking those kind of silly, undisciplined penalties.
Yeah. Looking at the defense, let's just say what's real. Brady Shea not been what we thought Brady Shea was going to be. It's just not worked for whatever reason. Alexander Carrier gone, Dante Fabro gone. We've got a good look at Adam Wilsby. We've gotten a great look at Nick Blankenberg. We also have in Milwaukee Mark Del Gaizo and Spencer Stastny. In the pipeline, you have players like Tanner Molendyke and Andrew Gibson, who we could see in Nashville potentially next year. Emma, when you look at the defense, who do you give more ice time to down the stretch? If you're Andrew Brunette, who do you give ice time to in Nashville down the stretch?
You mean of the guys who are currently in Nashville,
Currently
or
available, who are available to play in Nashville?
so that includes guys who are in Milwaukee
Yes.
right
Yeah.
now? I
Yeah.
see. Yeah, I think you give more time to Del Gaizo for sure. I think that you give some more time to Willsby. I do really like that. Finally, we got Justin Barron out of the lineup against Ottawa. But I mean, not that it proved to really make that much of a difference, but um, yeah, I think you with Stastny, I understand where they're at with him because he has not played a lot this year. He didn't come into the fold until December, and he kind of got rushed up really quickly because of some
Mhm.
injuries. So with him, yes, I would love to see more of him, but I also understand more of why he's in Milwaukee, and I'm okay with that right now. Um, He's also on a 2-year contract, so I'm less, worried about his future for per se, but, um, you know, I would like to see Mark Del Gaizo, bring him back. I mean, the problem is they're so deep on the left side of the defense, and that is where he falls as well, and so that's part of the issue. I mean, like, again, you have Yossi who can play the right side. I wanna know what I would like to see is, I mean, we saw a little bit of it. I'd like to see more of it. Maybe not necessarily giving Willsby more, like, total ice time, but put him on the right side because they were trying that. They started
Mhm.
trying that a little bit because it's like, "All right, we are too deep on the left, we need guys on the right," and kind of having him do a Roman Yossi type situation, play on his off side. And I think the early returns on that were pretty positive. So I would definitely be open to seeing more of Willsby playing on the right side, just to see how that looks.
What do you have to do to get a right shot defenseman around here?
Seriously, well, they had one.
I know they
They
have
had
one.
2
Well,
actually,
you have to not put them on waivers, first of all,
or trade them.
or trade them.
But
Just throwing that out there.
yeah,
Yeah, defense, they are gonna have to figure some things out on defense. There is some defensive depth. Mentioned Molendyke, mentioned Gibson, and I think that just those two alone could change the way the defense looks next season. But I agree with you. We need to get a better look at Mark Del Gaizo. I think at some point you do need to get Stastny back up here and get him going. But again, it comes down to where is the fit for that? And what do you take Willsby and Blankenberg out? I think, they're doing what you need them to do. Are you going to get more out of bringing up a Spencer Stastny? I don't know, but defensively, at least we know there's something in the pipeline, coming along. So talk about defense, the pipeline, pretty good, pretty robust there. Yeah, the forward situation. We're going to talk about offensive producing and who could be the great future hope for the Nashville Predators in the forwards. If you are looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sporting event, you're going to find the right ticket at the right price with Gametime Picks. It's never been easier. Let me explain to you how easy this is and how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all of the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. The seat view feature is a game changer. Before you even hit buy, you can see exactly where your seat's going to look like at the venue. It's very reassuring. And the best part, you are covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they're going to refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Emma, there are some players that Barry Trotz has kind of mentioned here and there about, maybe we're going to get a chance to see them. And look, if ever Nashville had a window to YOLO and bring up some players, this is it, friends. A couple of names that Trotz has mentioned. Reed Schaefer. I think we would have seen Reed Schaefer here, except he has been injured in Milwaukee. When I think of Reed Schaefer, I kind of compare him to a huskier, potentially a little shorter Michael McCarron-ish kind of player, but with, an offensive upside as well. So that's somebody that if McCarron were to be traded, which, of course, at this point, all the names are being floated out there. I think Reed Schaefer is somebody that the Predators would look at as sort of a guy for that role. Another one, Joakim Kemell. Haven't seen him yet in Nashville. And I think it's somebody I wouldn't be surprised to see come up here soon and just get a crack and see what we've gotten him at the NHL level.
Yeah, I mean, Kemmel especially, I think that he is a guy I would be stunned if we don't see him in Nashville this year at this point. If
Mhm.
the season had gone differently, maybe not, but I think that, there's really no reason not to. He's a guy that, like you said, Barry Trotz has mentioned quite a bit as a guy that is like, all right, we want to see what he's got. He just went to the AHL All-Star game in place of Vinnie Hinostroza, who, of course, was here in Nashville before he got waived. Um, and I think that, he's had a solid season. I mean, he's got that lethal slap shot,
My
and
gosh.
he is, he's extremely talented. He was the guy that the Predators kind of lucked out that they were surprised. A lot of people were surprised that he fell as far as he did in the draft for them to get him. And so I think that um, he's developed his game a lot in the last couple seasons in Milwaukee. And so he's a guy that I could see, yeah, like give him a shot because this is about the time that you should be trying him and seeing what he can do. Now the problem is though, and I really don't have a solution for this either, is that bringing a young player into the fold in the current situation that
Climate.
Nashville is in, yes,
Yes.
it's tough, it's
Mhm.
tough, and I mean, listen, I'm not saying that you can only bring up young players if you're winning, like, that's a stupid argument, but I think that again, I would feel a little bit more comfortable about it if guys looked a little bit more connected. It just looks like out there watching Nashville, like I said, they just look disconnected. They look like they're missing assignments. They're, never seem to be where they're supposed to be at any given time, especially on the defense, more so than the forwards. But still, I think that I would feel, again, back to what we were saying about Evangelista earlier, which is like, this does not feel like the season to give a really well-informed opinion of anyone on the Predators, just because nothing has looked right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I do think it's tough. You've got, Zach L'Heureux up here, Fedor Svechkov up here. And yes, you are like, hey, I am in the NHL, but have also just gotten on the struggle bus. And what does that do as, you see Steven Stamkos and Philip Forsberg, kind of struggling for consistency, the mental game alone that this team is having to play. It's tough.
And even with Svechkov and L'Heureux, when they came up, there was still it's like there's still a chance. It's like, "Hey, we can
Right.
turn this around." Now, they're not turning this around. So it's like, I mean, again, this is exactly when you bring up this kind of player, just, "Hey, go out there, have fun. Let's see what you got."
Yeah.
Um, maybe, I think this would be a after the Four Nations break call up. I don't think there's really any sense in bringing him up now with 2 games
Right.
before the break, but, maybe even after the trade deadline. Again, depending on what Nashville does too at the deadline, if you mentioned McCarron, all kinds of names are floating around out there.
Mhm.
So that's, good to know as an option that you have. If things were going well for Nashville right now, I would not say get Kemell up here right now. Like, I don't know that he's fully there, but I think
Mhm.
that, he's a guy who has certainly earned his little NHL tryout, and he'll get it this year, I'm confident.
I would love to see him come up and get on that second power play unit. What can you
Mhm.
do? Because he has that, like you said, that slap shot, but he also has kind of that spot. Like he's a little bit in Steven Stamkos's office. So it'd be interesting to see him on that second power play unit. For me, the Athletic released they're releasing their NHL prospect rankings. Nashville came in at 8th. And Mollendijk, Matthew Wood, and I can't remember who the other third top prospect was. Nashville would have been much higher had they kept Yaroslav Askarov. But I do think there is potential here. For me, I think it is important what you do this season for these players, like the Evangelistas, the Svechkovs, the Joakim Kemells. This team is not going to make the postseason. And if you can get the veterans in a place where they embrace the opportunity to play alongside some of these young guys, I think Barry Trotz absolutely has to see what he has in Joakim Kemell. It'd be great to see Reed Schaefer. I don't know that we will. What can Fedor Svechkov do playing with somebody like Philip Forsberg? Barry Trotz needs to have some sort of idea before he goes to that draft with, 3 picks in his pocket in the first round. That's what I think Nashville's got to focus on when you're looking at where they're at. Yeah, it sucks, but what are you going to do with the time left? And I think a big responsibility is going to be evaluating what you have in the pipeline that's available to you next season. We'll see what they do.
I agree, and I think you still have to do that. However, even if, we've seen Svechkov, we've seen L'Heureux, we haven't seen Kemmel, but even if we see him too, where I'm at with this is very you sure as heck better use that first round pick.
My gosh.
Get a freaking forward. Like, please, like preferably a center, but honestly, a forward will do. Any forward will do because this organization lacks that like kind of superstar
Mhm.
forward. Like I think that Svechkov maybe could be that. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know. Again, I'm a little concerned already about L'Heureux even being that. I mean, I I don't know. I'm worried he's gonna get pigeonholed. But then again, you look at a guy like Kirill Kaprizov, plays with an edge, but he's the guy in Minnesota. So it's not impossible. But I think that it's hard. It's hard. You don't have anyone on this team right now of the younger group, not counting like the Philip Forsbergs, et cetera, but you don't have anyone who really has that it factor that's like,
Yes.
yes, he can be, like he can take over a game kind of ability. And I don't know, maybe again, I don't expect any guy to look like that the minute they come up from the AHL. Like that's not fair to expect that. But I don't know. There's no one in this there aren't any forwards in this pipeline, quite honestly, that really excite me. I'm eager to see
Mhm.
Kemell. I'm eager to see him. Like I feel good about him. I think he's gonna, be a good impact player for this team. Is he a franchise cornerstone type player? I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know. And I think that I want a forward who excites me. And I just don't think that they have that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Barry Trotz had better get that. If this team continues on the trajectory in which they're going, th their odds for a higher pick get better and better. And I know Nashville's draft philosophy is take the best player on the board, but for the love, unless it's Cale Makar Jr.,
Yeah.
do not take a defenseman. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Well, now there's that kid, another Schaefer,
Yes,
Matthew
I
Schaefer is, he's kind of been flip-flopping with James Hagens as the, projected number one overall. But I'm like, good Lord. I get it. He's supposed to be God's gift to the blue line, but I'm like, Barry, read the room. Read the room. Please let someone
we've
else
talked
take him.
about optics, okay?
Like,
Let me
we
tell you.
yes. It's like, you have Molendyke, you have Gibson, you have all these other guys. Let's just ride that out for a little bit here, and then, you know, God willing, this disaster doesn't continue for a whole 'nother season, but in the event that it does, the 2026 draft class is projected to actually be deeper and
Mhm.
stronger than the 2025 class. The Of course, they're already, you already have a projected number one overall in 2026 is Gavin McKenna, who plays
Yes.
for Medicine Hat.
Yep.
Um, and he's like something I forget what milestone he reached, but, like, the only person it was a points milestone, and it was, like, the only guy in the last 25 years who's reached it faster than him was Connor Bedard. So it's like,
Okay.
okay, like, pretty
Okay.
pretty good company. He's, again, he's not a center like Bedard, so I don't know that the hype will be quite the same as it was for him, but it's like, "Hey, there's more coming."
Yeah.
Again, hopefully Nashville is not getting the number one pick in 2026, but hey, if they do, there's something
Well,
to look forward to.
after the season that you and I have had to cover for the Nashville Predators, I rule nothing out. Literally
Sure.
anything can happen, Fred. Sure. I think that needs to be the Locked On Predators swag we sell. Sure.
Sure.
2024, 25. Sure. Yep. So a lot of interesting things in the pipeline. And like Emma and I have said, Barry Trotz, you might want to start looking at that right about, I don't know, now or right after the Four Nations break. So it'll be interesting to see if we get a chance to see some of these other faces and if Andrew Burnett gives some of these younger guys opportunities with veterans. It could pay off for Nashville in the end, but we'll see what they do. Before we wrap up this episode about the youngins, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
You can find me at Emma_Lingen on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at ANK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that is going to do it for this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with an all new episode. We'll see you then.